You're going to want to watch this episode if you were curious of whether or not someone has stated policies, i.e., external integrity, and internally they don't follow them. And so there's an interesting conversation back and forth of when and where it allows somebody to be not credible and where, or dubious, and how much or how big that dubiousness is. Anyhow, welcome to Dear Credibility Expert. This is Mitchell Levy, and I have an amazing question today, although the question takes a little bit of time to answer or to ask. The question was, the way it was worded was, it's someone who works with folks who are leaders, and those leaders have a corporate policy around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they went ahead to define what diversity by itself was. And diversity is diversity of thought, diversity of process, the opposite of groupthink, the opposite of right and wrong, left and right, that sort of thing. And so the question was, can a leader whose corporate policies say we're focusing on diversity and inclusion, can a leader be credible if behind the scenes in their lives, they themselves don't live those practices? Okay, great question. So where do we start? Okay, first of all, the definitive yes and no on credibility, there are 10 values associated with credibility. The way I think these values are addressed are specifically in relation to this question is I'm going to focus on internal and external integrity. Okay. So of the 10 values associated with credibility, let me just read them off. Credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. Under being trusted, it's showing up as your authentic self. It's having external integrity, vulnerability, and being coachable. Now, under being known, it's servant leadership, being of service to others. It's showing the intent and commitment to do the right thing and having internal integrity. And then under being liked, it's sharing your stage. I call that spreading cred dust, and showing respect. Now, it's interesting to think about a leader whose corporate policies are focused on diversity, equity, inclusion. And what's interesting is the question was if they don't live it that way at home. Now, it depends on what don't live it that way at home means, right? If they're not of service to others, like they're a service to one group and not another, and in the disservice to the other group, they're demonstrating hate, that's almost an instant credibility. If I think about those 10 values, if I'm going to sum it up, it's all about love. It's about love and respect. So if the leaders in their personal lives are demonstrating hate in any way, then the answer is yes. That you fall into the bucket. By the way, we're going to cover the gray areas pretty soon. So the answer is yes, they're not credible if hate is part of what they do in their home lives. If they don't have the intent and commitment to do the right thing. So let's say there's only 2 of 8 that don't count. Well, that's, then it's like, it just depends on whether or not that's also coupled with hate, if it's coupled with disrespect. Let me focus specifically on external integrity versus internal integrity, because this is where I think this one really fits. On external integrity, let's say the corporate policies say, DEI, the corporate policies say we as a company focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. And the leader, although they say those words and maybe even externally they act those words, when the cameras are off, when they're in private session, the things that they actually say, the things that they actually do are their internal integrity doesn't actually coexist with their external. The question is that person still credible? Well, if let's say you're part of the leadership team and the big cheese is someone who will give it, let's not do this really super heated topic. Let's do something that might be a little bit easier to wrap our arms around. So let's say a leader is really very much focused on external integrity, very much focused on driving and being the right person. And then on a business trip, they go out. Actually, a story somebody told me, they went out on a business trip, and one of the leaders of the management team saw the big cheese cheating on their spouse. The person I spoke with lost complete because of the lack of internal integrity. The person I spoke with lost complete credibility in everything that the leader does. Right? So does it mean that the person's not credible? Well, in the eyes of investors, maybe that's not as big of a thing. In the eyes of the management team that was following them, or at least the person I spoke with, the answer was yes, they're not credible. So, it's a very interesting fine line. If you look at politicians that on an external level are very credible, but on an internal level, maybe they cheat on their spouse or cheat on their taxes, or what do they just cheat on their diet, right? Do you lose faith in someone being credible, i.e. the integrity to follow through on their words, to say what they do and do what they say, if they're doing something along those lines? And so there's some buttons you could press that would say that's an immediate yes no switch. Right. The big issue, though, in the world where we all have a camera and we all have a microphone, is it's whereas a human will separate out in their actions the difference between external and internal integrity. Those that are not involved can't make that distinction, don't make that distinction. And so subsequently, if the management team is saying one thing externally but doing something else internally, at some point in time, those sort of values and then subsequently that lack of credibility associated with the ability of those individuals to lead start coming to light. So I think that's where I'll lead it. I don't want to say there's a definitive yes or no, other than maybe the hate word. That's definitive, right? That's, to me, it's you don't have to love everyone. You certainly cannot hate anyone. Is that true too? I don't know. One could certainly make options and ideas, but having hate, lacking the ability to forgive in one's heart is not, are the types of values that cause people to go down a bad path. So coming back to this, it really, credibility in this particular case is the credibility, the perception of one's character. So it's the character you have and the perceptions of one character. And when the internal working, internal integrity and internal actions, or the actions that happen when someone is not in the office, if those actions are in violent disagreement with the actions that the corporate says, it is hard for those people to continue to be credible from a character perspective in the eyes of the people who are seeing who they are in their character and need to follow them. And so you can interpret that in such a way I don't want to say yes or no, but you can interpret that in such a way where you could see, well, we may not be, if it's important to have the stakeholders that are part of the company to follow and believe in the credibility, and that credibility can happen if the internal integrity is not in alignment with the corporate external integrity, then that's a disalignment. That's a misalignment that needs to be addressed. You hope you find that useful. I am so looking forward to hearing and seeing the feedback and comments on that. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much.